Dramatic entrance, huh?
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I was not expecting that. That's winning all the way around. I love
Yeah.
it. Oh my gosh.
And I had to go at 8:59 to hope that I hit it just right, and everything's good. Check us out. Good morning, Gatlin. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
A little bit of rain last night, so it's smelling good outside. I like it.
Nice. Yeah. The cold is coming back, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think a lot of places around, at least people that I was talking to, East Coast and stuff like that, had some really nice 60, 70 degree weather. Spring is tempting us.
Yep.
Oh man. All right. So speaking of spring, what a segue.
Hey-o, we're gonna grow some trees.
Let's talk about the foliage tool. So let me do my quick basic intro here. So GatlenShado is our creative director, and he's going to be leading you through using Unreal Engine to create some really cool effects. And I think he has a bonus, one of his favorite tools, Zbrush, as well. You're going to see him kind of work that in creating assets for this platform. So you can go ahead and post messages in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat while he's working. I'll try to follow along as well and be a good student. Ajir, good morning, sir. So if you're watching this as a recording, go ahead and post in the comments if you have any questions or you'd like to see anything new. And don't forget the good old likes and subscribes and things like that if you enjoy what you're seeing. Gatlin, take it away, bro.
We're doing the thing. All right. So we are totally going to be picking up from where we were last week and the week before, where we were working with the landscape tools and then kind of playing with the materials in here. So this week we're going to go ahead and just kind of finish it off. There's no such thing as a finished product when it comes to art. It's just not a thing. However, we are going to go ahead and use the foliage tools to kind of put in some trees and also some rocks, which is actually pretty cool that you can actually do this with the rocks. You can actually do this with like any static mesh, honestly. And yeah, like we had mentioned before, I'm going to jump into ZBrush. I live in ZBrush. I love ZBrush. If I'm not in Unreal, I'm usually in ZBrush or Maya or Photoshop or in front of my computer in general, kind of a thing. And I absolutely love the program. The ZBrush part is not going to be like from beginner to end. This is definitely more of an intermediate, almost advanced kind of setup. That being said, if there's something that I'm doing in there, again, drop some comments. Let me know what's going on, what you want to see inside of that program. I could absolutely do some beginner stuff with it. I've been teaching it for many years, and I absolutely love it. I've done a lot of fun things with it. My wedding ring was actually made in ZBrush. I didn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, just $1,000 out of the program, and not the hardware that I could have
so you had to make it real. That was the challenge.
Right, yeah, I didn't have to. Oh my gosh, it wasn't a third of my salary. It was everything. So okay, let's go ahead and jump right in here. And to do this, I do want to point out a couple things. I've already downloaded a couple of pieces, so I want to show you where you can get said pieces. One of them is this right here. I'm going to go and drop this into the chat. You can actually find this in the Unreal's Epic Launcher. This is just the Temperate Vegetation. So these trees, it's about a gig worth of information. Took about 10-15 minutes or so to go ahead and download. So while it's doing that, I'm actually going to jump into ZBrush and we'll talk about what we can do in there to kind of build a palm tree, because this is nice, but I've got a beach and I want to put a palm tree out there. So we're going to kind of go that direction too. But this is where I'm getting this information. Go ahead and download it. It will ask you if you want to go ahead and add it to a project. That is what I had done here and just went ahead and added it. You can see that I've actually got it right down here, and there's all kinds of goodies in here. Some pretty interesting blueprints. I was digging in this morning going, I wonder what those actually do. I have no idea. So let's jump over into ZBrush. So let's bring this up like so. For those of you that have never seen this program, a lot of people complain about the UI, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's completely customizable, so you can kind of do whatever you want. Essentially, what I'm going to do is use some of the modeling tools as opposed to the sculpting tools to actually create a tree. So it's a little bit different kind of workflow, but it's still a lot of fun. So to begin this, what I need to do is actually bring in some sort of a model. And over here on the top right, I'm just going to press this Polymesh 3D button. This is just going to allow me to click and drag in the canvas, and I get a little Polymesh. I'm going to press T on the keyboard so that I can actually sculpt this. I'm going to bring up the floor here so we can kind of see where the ground is. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this in is because I just need to create shape, and I'm going to replace this one. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to the top where it says move. This is going to allow me to get into these little pieces of my gizmo. Inside of this gizmo, I'm going to click on this little gear, this top left one. And what I'm looking for is pretty much just a cylinder. Doesn't matter which one I use. I think I'm going to go ahead and use this cylinder 3D. And the reason I'm using this one, if I turn on the wireframe, is it does have a pole on it. It's going to help just a moment. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn this. So use my rotation tool, hold down shift and just rotate this about 90 degrees. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to create the base of my palm tree. And they've got these really awesome segmented like chunks, so they're really recognizable on what they are. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and build. I'm going to unmask the top of this, and if I hold Control and lift up, I can basically just extrude this up just a little bit. And then I'm going to clear my mask and then just unmask the top of this again. And what this allows me to do is manipulate just the vertices that are up here on the top. I do want my gizmo in the center of this. It'll make my life a little bit easier. So this little button right here will allow me to do that. And I can just grab this and just kind of scale this out about like so. And just kind of checking proportions. I think I want to squeeze this down just a little bit, about like so. There we go. So this is section 1 of what I need for the rest of my palm tree. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. And I can duplicate this very easily. I'm just going to hold down the Control key and click and drag. And you can see I create a second one. And I'm going to get it to right about here-ish. I'm going to let go of the Control key and then just continue to pull up, and it'll just kind of duplicate over and over and over and over.
What?
Ta-da!
Dang.
Oh, it gets crazier. It gets crazier. Okay, so here is the base of my tree. We'll call this pretty much the base. So over here, this is considered a subtool. It's, if you're used to programs like Maya or Blender, this is very much just kind of like its own little scene. I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of this. So that's very easy to do. There's just a duplicate button here. Just give it a click. And now I have 2 of these. So I can just slide this one over. We can see the second one. And again, I'm just going to replace this one because I don't need it at all. So again, I'll just click on this little gear and I'm going to go ahead and grab this polyplane. So now I have this plane. I'm going to rotate it so it's a little easier to see because I want it to face the camera. So hold shift and just rotate it about 90 degrees. Oh, a little off. There we go. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just creating a canvas that I can basically draw on top of. And one of the really cool tools that just got added to ZBrush, this is one of the reasons I want to show you all this. So this is an amazing tool. I can actually just kind of create geometry on the fly. So I'm going to turn on the wireframe so you can see that this is literally just a polyplane. And I'm going to hold the Control key. And up here, there's this mask tool that I'm now getting while holding the Control key. I'm going to click on that. What I'm looking for in here is this mesh extrude. And what I can do with this, let's go back into draw mode. If I hold Control, I can click and drag, and I can draw a shape out on top of this. And when I let go, it actually creates, it's very, 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 very thin. It's really, really thin, but it creates a 3-dimensional shape. And this is what I'm going to use to create my, or at least the base for the leaves that are on here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So if I change my Z intensity here, just turn this up, should make it a little bit taller. So basically kind of create something that looks like a leaf, about like so. There we go. So that's pretty good. I think that works well. Now, essentially, I just need this front blue part. I don't need anything else. So if I hold down Control Shift, this gives me a whole new tool, and I can click on it, and everything else kind of disappears. Now, it still exists, so I do need to delete it. So if I go into my geometry section here, underneath modify topology, I'm going to go ahead and delete the hidden parts. So this is this button right here. That deletes anything that's in there. Goodbye, and it's totally gone. Now, this is a little dense for what I want to actually use it for. I'm thinking kind of a low polygon kind of shape. And this is, let's be honest, I'm already at 5,000. Woohoo! I'm already at 5,000 points on this. I don't need that many. I need a lot less. Let's just slide this over so we can see it. So some of the other tools that I can use inside of here is this little thing called the ZRemesher. And by using this, I can basically rebuild the topology on this, and it's going to make it nice and small. So I'm going to change a few of the settings. I'm just going to set my target polygon count right here. I'm just going to set that down to like 0.1 because this is in thousands, so somewhere around 100. Turn off the adaptive, and I'm just going to hit the ZRemesher button and let it do its magic. Ta-da! There we go. So now I have a very low resolution shape. Exactly what I need. So what I'm going to do with this is go ahead and set it on its side like so. Let's actually turn perspective on so we can kind of see this if I'm above it. That's a little easier. And I want to bend this into a leaf shape. So I'm going to change back over to my sculpting tools, and the sculpting tool that I'm looking for specifically, I hit the B key on the keyboard to find this, and then M. And what I want is my move brush. Where are you at? There you are. So just the regular move brush will be fine. Make my brush a little bit larger. There we go. And I can start to, and let's do this. Let's actually make this smaller. My brush is so big. And there we go. If I go in the middle of this, hold the Alt key, I can just kind of pull this up. I can kind of create a nice organic shape. If I hold Shift, I can kind of smooth some of this out. And really what I'm doing here is just kind of artistically deciding how I want this, one leaf to look. And then I'm going to use an array, for those of you that are familiar with arrays, to kind of create a whole bunch of these. About like so. Work. That will work. I'm also not worried that this is like infinitely thin, because in the game world, branches and leaves are pretty much infinitely thin all the time. So not that big of a deal. All right, cool. I'm going to move my pivot point over here a little bit. There we go. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I'm actually going to make everything a little bit smaller just to make my life a little bit easier. So to do that, I'm just going to click this little button here. Now I can manipulate all these pieces. I'm going to move my pivot back to the world origin though, so that I can scale everything kind of down to it. There we go. That's a little bit easier. Now my brush will be a little bit more effective. Cool. All right, so let's undo what we did and making everything being affected by the gizmo. We don't need that. And then let's go ahead and set this back up here. All right, so let's take this piece and we'll set it over the top. We can make it a little bit larger now. This is totally up to taste. Like, how big do we want this? About yay big should work fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create an array of all of these pieces here, but I do want to make sure that my pivot point is in a very specific location, because that will help in a moment. I'm just holding down the Alt key and just dragging on any one of these little 4 arrows on the corner to move my pivot around. All right, so now that I've got that, over here on the right inside of my tool palette, I'm going to open up my array mesh. I'm going to say array, and nothing happens. Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Cool. So it actually has done it. There's actually one of these right on top of the other one. You can see I've got a repeat 2 over here. So this little guy right here. So there are actually 2 of them in there. So let's go ahead and just turn this up so it's like, I don't know, something odd. Let's say like 9, right? And we're going to come down here a little further, and we're going to go ahead and turn on rotate. And
Time out. Wait a second. What is that zoom thing you just used? That was so cool.
So Zbrush has this built into it.
Are you kidding me?
No, dude. I love this program on so many levels. Oh, it's so awesome.
Sorry, I had to.
A little bit interject. Array. Yeah, for this. There you go. Gumby's got it. He knows what's up. All right. So we're going to go ahead and rotate. I'm assuming it's a he. I apologize if it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and take the array here, and I'm going to rotate it, and we're going to go around the Y axis because Y is up currently. So if I grab this and I rotate it, and you're like, oh, yay, but now it's kind of rotating in the wrong spot. Remember I was talking about that pivot point earlier? So I'm going to undo that. And if I look at this from the top, I can actually tell this to use this pivot point, and there's a button for it. It's actually called Transpose, because way back in the day, it was actually called the Transpose line. So if I hit this, and then I come over here, and I need to actually change the way this is thinking, and I need this line. This is this Transpose line, and there's a little tiny bright yellow spot right there. I'm just going to grab this and drag this over, and now when I change my rotation, it'll come out from right there.
Wow, James Bond kind of stuff right there.
So we want 360. There we go. So now we have this. Let's go ahead and leave this transpose, and I want to get my regular gizmo back. I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to click on this little roundy round arrow. It's going to reset my orientation. And just like I had done with the base down here, if I hold Control and click and drag, I can get a copy of this. So now I've got 2 of them in here. So let's just rotate these. There we go. And you'll notice the ones on the bottom are actually rotating too. And that's a feature, not a bug. What that is that there's this lock size. So I don't want to change the overall size. Actually, it's lock position too. There we go. That keeps them from doing that. I can just kind of make these a little bit smaller. And if I rotate the original one, they all kind of rotate. So there we go. So there's that. I'm going to reset my gizmo. Whoops. Hold Alt and reset it. I'll hold Control and drag this up a little bit more. And we'll pull this one up. And we'll rotate these. So I have a basic palm tree. It's not perfect. It's It's not great. But what's really cool about this is, again, this is an array. It's just instances. So the green ones that you see here are the original geometry. And what that allows me to do is if I go back into my sculpting mode, if I move one, you'll notice that they all kind of move along with it. So this is totally free and open. Another reason I really like this program is I can come in here and just kind of manipulate these to my heart's content until I get something that I really like. And it's really cheap because they're just instances. They're not the actual, full-on geometry. Not that, 1,000 points, let's be honest, there's not really a whole lot going on in here. I only got 1,200 points total for everything. This one is just 312, and that's just these three that are in here. So once I like this, and we'll say that I'm pretty happy with this, although I could probably, squish this down just a little bit. Where's the top of that thing? There it is. It's right about there. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. I need to commit this to being geometry. So I'm just going to say make mesh, and now they're all individual pieces of mesh, and I can still come in here, and if I start to sculpt on this, I will actually be able to move just like little local parts as opposed to making big global changes that I had before. So about like so. I'm just going to pull and move some of these around and get what I'm actually looking for. And I'm just kind of grabbing them and moving them for now. I'm not going to get too artistic. We're going to keep this as short as possible, just the points of what's actually happening. Vertices.
The points. You're going to have to leave.
Why don't you be like a tree and support someone? There you go. All right. So now that I've got this, I'm going to go ahead and hide these because I want to be able to kind of manipulate the base of this thing. So let's hide the leaves. Let's actually name the leaves too. So name that one, and then we'll name this one base, rename, or trunk. All right, so let's hide the leaves. So I'm also going to turn perspective off. I want to look at this straight on, and I'm going to bring back my gizmo wherever it went. There we go. So the orientation of the gizmo is going to be really important for what I'm about to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a deformer on this so that I can manipulate it and bend it around, because a straight up tree is pretty boring in my book. So again, let's click on the gear here, and all of these giant buttons that are under here, they're all kinds of deformers. There's some pretty cool ones in here, but my favorite one by far is definitely this bend to curve. So what this bend to curve is going to do, let me do the magnifying glass thing right now. What it's going to do is it's going to put like this deformer around it, and it's going to be a little hard to see, but I bet you can probably see all these little pieces up here. And currently, the way this thing is set up is that it is, going side to side. Okay, and I don't want to bend this thing, this way. I want to bend it this way. So what I need to do is up here at the top, there's this little red one, and it changes the axis in which this is actually, running through my object. So I'm just going to click and drag till I get it going blue in this case. So I've got a point up here at the top. I've got a point down here at the bottom. Well, that's not a lot. It's basically a line. It's not a curve at this point. So point. So I'm going to go ahead and change the resolution and just kind of turn this up. So I've got a couple points in here. I don't think I need that many though. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now I can just grab these and I can bend this into the shape that I would like. And let's not bend the bottom too much. There we go. And turn it 90 degrees or so. Just kind of bend this over. Turn perspective back on. Let's say we want a palm tree to be, I don't know, something kind of like that. That works pretty well. Now, like any tree, they're always fatter at the bottom and they're always thinner at the top. So we can actually manipulate that. If I click on any of these, you notice I get 3 more little gizmo pieces, which is great. And if I grab this top one, it's going to be a twist, and I can actually rotate this if I want. This little one right here is a scale, so I can actually just make these a little bit larger. The other one's kind of fun. If we look at it from the bottom, you can kind of pinch one direction and pinch the other way. Not really what I want right now, so we're just going to make this one a little bit bigger. And we can grab this next one, grab this little guy right here, make that a little bit bigger, grab this one, that a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead and grab this top one up here, and we'll make this one a little smaller. So now I have my palm tree base. Let's go ahead and bring the leaves back, and then I can just manipulate these using the gizmo. I'll just rotate it, set this in place. You want to be able to see the back side of the leaves. Like, they're kind of hard to see right now, obviously, from this end. Down here in the bottom, there's a little option that says display properties. And instead of display properties, all you got to do is hit this double button. Okay, so display properties, double. And now I can see the back side of it. Make it a little bit easier to see what we're doing. Set those right. here. Whoops, let's bring it over a little bit. Get it to taste. All right, so now we have our awesome palm tree. Now, as mentioned before, our subtools, we have a trunk and we have our leaves. And like I said, these are totally different like worlds. They're different scenes. So we need to kind of slam them together. So that's pretty easy to do. We'll just select this top one. And down below, we have this merge. We'll just say merge down. It's going to say, hey, this is not an undoable operation. This is something to be aware of inside of ZBrush. There are certain things that you cannot undo. It's not possible. It's just not a thing. There's no ones and zeros for it after it does this thing. And in this case, I'm like, okay, that's fine. If you ever panic though, I'm going to say cancel here. If you're like, I'm not sure I want to commit, there's a quick save button up here at the very top. And of course, this will then allow me to reload this file if I need to. We're not going to go into that right now, but you can do it. I'm going to say merge down and I'm going to say, okay, awesome. So now I have these two pieces. Let's clear the mask I just created. And let's also change back to my pen tool. All right. So in here, I'm going to turn the lines off. We now have one object and it's got two different poly groups on it, the blue one and this kind of tan one, right? So this is exactly what I want actually, because I can use these poly groups as materials when I get over to Unreal. We'll go ahead and do that when we get there. So here's our little palm tree. It's ready to go. It's only like 3,000 points. That's actually not too bad. I could definitely go ahead and put UVs on this. I'm going to skip that. It's not going to be worth it for what I want to show you because we can just put two real simple materials on it and we'll call it good over there. So then we need to export this out. So up here in the tool palette, let's come up here to export and we'll go ahead and just do the cardinal sin. And I'm going to drop this on my desktop. Horrible, horrible thing to do. And then I'm also going to change it from being an OBJ to being an FBX, because using an FBX file, I can go ahead and use that material data I was just talking about. So we'll go ahead and say save. I'm going to get a new pop-up. It's going to say, hey, what do you want to export? In this case, I've only got one object. So I'm just going to go ahead and send out that one selected one. What kind of FBX format? I'm going to leave it as is. Smooth normals I am going to leave on. And then down here under export polymat or polygroup as materials, I want to leave this on too for reasons explained earlier. So we'll go ahead and say, okay, file exported. Huzzah. So now I should have, yeah, there it is, that palm tree FBX. So let's go back over to Unreal. And I can literally, let's go back into my Gatlin assets here and scroll down a little bit. And I'm just going to drag this into here and let go. I'm going to get a little pop-up that says, hey, now that you're importing something, what do you want me to do with it? And this is Unreal asking me. So do you want me to actually generate collision for this thing? Sure, why not? I don't think it's going to be great collision, but it'll work for right now. That's a whole nother concept. It's also asking me about materials. I'm going to say do not search for materials and do not create a material. I don't want you to be doing anything. And I don't have any textures, so I'm just going to toggle that off. Down here at the bottom, I'm just going to go ahead and say import. It says, hey, it's got some by zero normal. I'm not too worried about that. That's cool. In this case, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. So there's something I do need to point out. And because we've gone from because we've gone from ZBrush into Unreal, if we open this up, my tree is tiny. It's so tiny, in fact, I can't see it. Now I zoom in, it's in there. I promise you it's in there. It's itty bitty. And this is a byproduct of coming from ZBrush. So what I'm going to do is over here in the palm tree on the right, so I'm in the static mesh editor. I should explain that. I double clicked on the static mesh in the content browser. Over here on the right in the details panel, if you scroll down a ways, there is an import settings. And inside of here, if we go into mesh, I believe it's in mesh. Nope, I lied. It's underneath mesh. So further below mesh, there's a transform. And underneath transform, there is this little spot right here. And it says import uniform scale at like at 1. Well, it's coming from ZBrush, so it needs to be a lot bigger. So I can set this to 50, hit enter. And then up here on the top, I could say re-import, ta-da, and then it'll just instantly make this a lot larger. So if I drag this into my world, let's put it on the beach over here somewhere. Is that large enough? That's still pretty small, huh? Oh yeah, that's tiny. All right, cool. So let's go back over here. Troubleshooting, let's set at 100. Say re-import. Bigger? Nope, need to go larger. Let's try 1,000.
There we go.
Serious. Hey, there we go. That's much better. So if I say play, yeah, that looks about the right size. Cool. And then collision, I probably won't be able to get too close to it. Yeah, that's what I thought. So now we got this huge tree. Okay, let's go ahead and build a couple of really simple materials for this. So down here in the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and right click ahead and say material. And I'm just going to create a brown one and a green one. So m_brown. And I'm just going to right click on that real quick. Actually, hold on, let's wait. Double click on it, open this up. I'm going to hold 3 on the keyboard, and this is going to give me a 3 vector. And then left mouse click, and then boom, I get this. So this is basically a color. I can click here, and then over here on the left, I can click, and let's give it a kind of a brown. Cool. That looks good. We'll drop that into our base color. Now, I don't want this to be super shiny, so I'm going to, oops, bring a constant in on the roughness. So I can just type in con and constant. And I don't want it to be mirror. It's about to be mirror. I don't want that. So I'm going to take my value. I'm just going to crank that up to a 1, make it nice and rough. There we go. So now I got a nice rough surface. Go ahead and save that. Wait for it. We're going to make a duplicate of this. It'll be real quick. Just right click on this and just say duplicate. Control W also works. And then we'll call this one M green. And we'll open this one up. And instead of that brown color, we're just going to click and make this a green color. That's green enough. I'm not going to get too nitpicky at this point. Okay, so inside of our palm tree, let's scroll back up here at the top. So this is our static mesh for the palm tree. You'll notice up here in the top right, I have 2 material slots. So this is where my brown and my green come in. So I can isolate this and be like, okay, cool. There's a little isolate button right here. This allows me to figure out which part of the tree this is, because I didn't name it, and it probably has, oh, it does. Look at that. It actually has the name in there. So trunk 0 and trunk 1. Yeah, see, that didn't do a great job. So we can actually name this if we want. We call this leaves. There we go. So let's go ahead and click on this world grid material and type in green. Should get our green material. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then we'll do the same thing down here, but we'll say brown. Let's unisolate this. And then we have our palm tree. Really simple. We're going cartoony today. That's exactly what we're doing. Save that out. And now when we come back to our world, huzzah, it's already magically done, which is great. So hopefully by now you all have something in there downloaded and installed into your world. So we can either use a palm tree or we can use those other pieces that we brought in. So we can actually do both of them too, which is pretty cool. So to add the actual foliage tools in here, we need to get to the foliage mode. So to do that, up here at the very top, there is a modes area. So we just click on this and you'll see we have our landscape, and then just below it, we have our foliage. So let's just click the little checkbox there. Yay, now we have our foliage over here. So we can just start to drop in the pieces that we want to use as foliage. So I have a palm tree. I'm going to grab one of the trees that came with the pack. And then if you don't have either one of these, inside of the content browser, you can actually find the rock that's in there too. So let's look for that one first. So down here in the starter content that came in when we loaded this one in way back when, inside of our, where are you at, props, there's a props folder. So if you double click on this one and scroll down a little further, there's this rock right here. So we can grab this rock and drop it into our foliage like so. And let's go ahead and do that with the other ones that we want to grab too. So inside of my assets, I have my palm tree. I'm going to drag that in there. And then in the piece that we brought in for our temperate spruce, inside of here, we can go into the meshes down a little bit farther, and we have a full, we have a half, and we have a small. It's not really going to matter which one that you bring in. If you haven't brought them in yet, you may have to wait for the compilers, the shaders to compile. Holy moly. So we're going to say full, and I'm just going to grab the low because these are a low poly. These are about 7,000 points versus about 13,000, I think, for the high ones. So I'm just going to drag this one in here as well. So now I have 3 pieces in here that I can use. And if we look at them, you'll notice there's a little checkbox and then there's a little save icon. And we want to hit this little save icon up for each one of these and save these as foliage assets, because right now they're just static meshes and you can just bring a static mesh in, which works, but that's not exactly what we want. We want to be able to use these as something that we can paint on. You can see my little paintbrush here is this little dome. I'll get rid of that guy right there. So let's go and click on those little save. It's going to say, hey, where do you want to save these? And you're going to be saving this as a foliage type. So I'm just going to save these inside of my little asset folder right here. So I'll just say save. Do this for this one. And I'm going to make sure that they're all in the same spot. And then there, and then say, okay. So perfect. Now that they're saved, I can then click these little checkboxes and I can start painting with them. And then, yay, I get lots of them. Well, this is ridiculous, as if it would be anything else in my world. So right now I'm painting with all of these, and you can see, zoom in on it. You can see I've got 69 of one, 66 of other, and 76 of this one. That's a lot right on top of itself. So let's undo that. We don't need that. That's ridiculous. So let's just kind of play with these one at a time. Let's go ahead and do the rocks first, because we've got those. So with this one selected and turned on and selected, we have a whole host of tools here that we're going to be able to play with. So let's make a little bit of room so we can see what we're working with. So we have our rock selected. Perfect. What is our density per unit? And at 100, this is pretty dense. Like, that's a little bit overkill for what we need. So we can go ahead and turn this down to something like 10. And now, there we go. That's a little bit more manageable. We can probably even go further down to like 2. There we go. So now we're just getting a couple of them, which works really well. And you can do this with trees. You can do this with cigarette butts. You can do this with hay. You can do it with all kinds of stuff. It's great. Okay. So that's our density. We also have this radius, and let me turn on tooltips here so we can kind of read what these are actually doing. If I hover over this, so a foliage instance is placed with the density. That's our first one. The radius is the minimum distance between foliage instances. So each one of these rocks that I'm putting down, these are instances. So we can control a little bit with the density, but if we actually take our density up to something like 100 where it was before, and we set our radius to like 1,000, what it's doing, I'm going to undo this real quick. Go away. Oh, hold on. I'm going to do it this way. These are undoable operations. It's not like Zbrush. 1,000. So you'll notice that I'm not getting nearly as many of them, and they've got a radius around them that is about 1,000 units. So that way we don't have too many of them all in the same spot. So you can kind of control this another way too, which is kind of nice as opposed to just the density. And they are using like the center pivot point for each one of these. Like that's kind of the main, from that point. It's not the edge of the object. It's the pivot point that's on there that it's controlling that radius. Okay. So we also have this other little button down here. It's a single instance override radius right here. And if I use this and then I come up here to the top, I can actually drop just a single one. And because I'm overriding this radius, I can put another rock right next to another one. If I have this toggled off, then I can't, it's like single. It's like, oh, well, this gives me an idea of how far away I have to be before I can drop another one. So you can kind of, get very artistic with it as opposed to just slapping them all over the ground. Let's go back up here into paint. We have a scaling option in here too. For these rocks, this is going to be really obvious. Right now, it's just doing a uniform, but we can say a minimum and maximum. So if we want these to be like half the size, but we want some of them to be huge, we set it like 0.5 and a 3. So I can zoom in on this. So our scale is at a 0.5 and a 3 for our scaling as we're dropping these on the ground. So let's back up here. And if I click and drag, you see we get some bigger ones. Oh, hold on. We've got our little radius thing going on here. You see we get big ones and we get little ones.
So cool.
This is awesome. I would caution you though, because depending on the way you've got your materials and your textures on these, they can look really stretched or very, very dense, the actual surface of them. So if I were to zoom over here, you can see that these little ones that I'm standing next to on the left, the texture, and it's kind of subtle. Maybe I can find a better example of it. Let's go over here. No, not really. Okay. Oh, there's one in there. Well, look at this one. Okay, so there we go. So you can see that the texture on the right, the rock on the right, it looks like it's more dense than the one that's up above. And that's just because it's a smaller object, so the texture isn't being stretched across the screen nearly as much. So little thing to kind of be aware of when you're playing with your uniform scale here. Let's go back over here. There we go. Marks, I love them. Zip around the world. We have our placement here. So we've got some like Z offset. So if we were to change something like, let's try like 100, and I click in here, start to get some that will kind of, because 100's not a lot. Whoa, slow down the camera a little bit. We'll get some that kind of float. Actually get right below it. There we go. So that's 100 units off the ground. So we can kind of, we want floating rocks. We can actually set this stuff up. What this is useful for is if you've got trees that are on a slope, and we'll see this in a little bit, is that the trees will kind of like stick out off the edge and they won't be embedded in the ground. So you can actually set that offset lower, that minimum offset lower, so they stick in the ground, which is really nice. Okay, so I got a bunch of stuff on screen here and I want to get rid of it. So there is actually a erase tool up here at the top. So I can come in here and I can just start to erase some of these out of here. Clear them out. So let's reset these. We have an align to normal. This will be easier to see with the trees. So we're going to hold off on that one. And then we have this max angle. So the max angle, a little faster camera here. Come over here. So we've got some kind of a wall over here that's really, really steep. And you can see that I can't, hold on, I've got the eraser, bad me. There we go. I can't put anything on there because it's got this really, really sharp angle to it. So this kind of allows you to kind of control what you actually want. So if I set something like 90 in here, I should be able to get, let me do it. Nope, it's not gonna let me do it. Oh, it must be 180. It's not gonna let me do it. Let's try 2. I bet the 0 is probably, just not gonna let me do it today. All right, well, fine, be that way. So this is supposed to control the angle that you can actually put this on the surface of the edges of these objects. It's not working though. Yeah, good times. It means I'm misunderstanding what that does. That's fine. I'll learn more later. There's a random yaw. This is kind of cool because, zoom in over here. So the random, where did you go? Random yaw right here. So what this does is it will take the object and it will spin it around its vertical axis. So what's nice about that is if I turn this off, we'll have a really obvious, really, really obvious. Let's go ahead and grab that palm tree. Turn that one off, turn that one on. So, oh, hold on. I've got to set all the settings on this one. They're all individual. And we'll set this at 1,000. You're really going to give that to me? Oh, hold on a second, because I'm still in the tree. Or still in the rock. There we go. There we go. Radius. We'll set this at like 500. All right. So if we back up, it'll be a little easier to see if we get kind of down over here. There we go. So random yaw. So if I turn this off and I draw these on here, you'll notice that they're all facing the same direction. Okay. Until I get off screen and then they started going that way. Oh, they're not going to right now. Well, thanks. So anyways, this is supposed to give it a random yaw, so it'll actually change the direction that they're actually going. It looks like it's going to do it for me anyways. I'll be danged. Well,
it looks like, yeah, it looks like it's going
and by
one direction for one and another direction for another.
Pull this way. Nope. I wonder if it's looking at the normals. Interesting. It does have a normal aligned. Let's turn both of them off. There, it's doing it. Okay. So yeah, I was looking at the normals. So now you can see that they're all facing the same direction. So this normal aligned, this is handy because if I have something like this, follow the direction of the actual ground, which is great for some things, not so great for others. For rocks, it probably wouldn't matter. For trees, it's probably not the greatest thing ever of all time.
Okay. That's pretty cool though.
We've also got a random pitch angle here too. And a pitch is, I like to think of it as like a pitcher. You know, it's the angle at which, it's the rotation at which the object is spun along its pitch angle. It's forward and backwards. I always think of a pitcher. I wish I had an image to show you guys so you can see what I mean. I've got it set at 0. Here we go. So now you can see it's pitching it forward.
So the pitch could be like an airplane going up or down, the nose going up or down.
Yeah. So it's rotating it around to this direction. So if you're looking straight down the axis right here, that's what it's doing. Like I said, I think of it as like a pitcher's, but yeah, like an airplane, totally an airplane.
Yeah. And then, so you have pitch, roll, and yaw. So roll would be the airplane turning side to side. Yaw is the airplane in a flat spin. And then pitch would be the nose going up or down.
I always think of Star Fox, like do a barrel roll, like the roll. That always makes me think of that one. Okay, so we've got our ground slope angle. We also have our height over here as well. So the ground slope angle, let's zoom up over here. But this is what's going to control this. So if we set this to 0, do that one either. 90. There we go. It has to be a bit higher. So now, there we go. This is what I was thinking the other one was up above. So this allows us to put, let's set our pitch back, these trees and rocks on something that's a bit more sheer. So what this is important for is for storytelling in my mind, because if we're on a really sheer cliff, you're probably not going to have a tree grow there. So the story is the tree can't grow on something that's very sheer, right? So we're thinking about the way that the world is actually being built. Tell the story of the world, how this is actually being created. All right. So there's that. And then there's this height. So this height, so if we set this at like, let's say 0, and we'll say our max at, let's say 5,000. So what this should do, set my pitch back, is I should be able to paint down here, but as I come further up, yep, see, I can't, oh, it's going to do it up there now. Anyways, I wonder if this is tall enough. 1,000. Should limit, yeah, there we go. So now I can't paint up here, but I can paint down below. So it's limiting the height at which these trees can actually grow, quote unquote, or where they can be placed in the world. So this is a height in the world, which is really kind of cool. So if you don't want your artist to be putting palm trees up in the Himalayas, you can set the tree so it can't do that, which is kind of nice. A little bit further down here, it's kind of an explanation of everything that's in here. So our instance settings, we have static and we have movable. For the most part, I leave everything to static because I don't really plan on moving them around, but you can actually set them to movable too. So if you need to move them with something like a blueprint or code, you can actually do that, or a character needs to push them around. There's that. Here's a really important one, this cull distance. So this cull distance, it will actually keep these things from being rendered at a certain distance away from the camera, which can be really important because if you have like Sherwood Forest in the background, but you don't want to be able to see it and you don't want it to lag out your computer, you can actually say at a certain distance, stop drawing these pieces. So if I do this, let's set this up. So if I draw, let's just draw a line of them right across here. If I start taking my max cull distance and I start cranking it up, is it going to let me do it? Here we go. You see 1,000 units, I can't see it, but if I start to get closer to these, they'll start to pop into existence. Doop, 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 doop. 1,000 is very small. So if we did something like, I don't know, 5,000 is actually not very big either. You'll see that they'll start to kind of disappear as I move away from them.
Yeah, that's a really important tool in 3D games for keeping lag under control, only keeping your focal objects
Absolutely.
in view.
So a couple other things under here that's nice about these instances is you can tell them to cast shadows or not. If they're way off in the background, save the computing power. You don't need to have these shadows turned on. You've got dynamic lighting, we've got dynamic field lighting, we've got shadows. I'm not going to go into all of these pieces and what they do, but they all have very specific uses and they're really, really powerful. We also have collision. Right now it says no collision. So I can quite literally walk right through these, get up close to these and go whoop, right through them. Ta-da! I can't actually do anything, where this one over here, remember we set this one up so that it does have collision because it's not one of those foliage instances. So if you want to be able to walk into these things or be able to climb up on them, make sure that you're setting your collision down here for the setup that you want. Like, do you want to block everything? Do you want to maybe just block the pawn? Do you want the spectator to be able to like stop at it too? If you got somebody that's kind of watching the game as a spectator, there's always that too. So let's just go ahead and say block all. Why not? Sure, why not? Translucency sorting. So you can actually set this. So like with the leaves on the trees, you may want them to sort in a specific order. Again, this is a performance piece as well as an artistic part. Like, well, do I want that to look like this? Do I not want that to look like that? How are we going to deal with this? Some physics stuff down here. There's some material overrides, scalability. A lot of these ones down here I've not really played with yet. So I'll let you explore those and kind of see what you want to do with them. So one last thing I do want to talk about before we get really artistic about this is that the backside of these are see-through, and they're supposed to be see-through because we told them to be see-through. We just didn't realize that we had done it. So this is a piece that is controlled inside of the material, not on the object. So up here inside of our green material, if we look over here on the left inside of our details, we'll lift this up a little bit. There's quite literally a checkbox over here that says two-sided. And if we turn this on, and we go ahead and save this, wait for it. our material will now have two sides to it, so we can actually see the backside of our leaves in here. So there we go. So now it's not see-through anymore.
Much better.
Oh yeah, so much good. All right, so things that we can kind of do now that we understand all or have gone through, hopefully you understand them. We can actually turn all of these on and kind of paint with them as we need. And if we had things like our altitude, as soon as I got to a certain point, the palm trees would stop painting as I got up higher up here. So we could set all that up, but I think, for artistic purposes, we can kind of just come through here and paint whatever we want. So these rocks, and I think the rocks are still pretty well set up. Yeah, so I can put a couple of them here, set a couple of them over there. I can also hit F11 so I can see everything that I want. And then I can kind of put a few of them here. Just go through and build our world. Oh, I think I've got some floaters in here too still. Oh, nope, it's in the ground. Okay, cool. And this is a really, really quick way to just populate your world. Like, it doesn't take very long at all to actually get everything that you need inside of here, which is great. I love it. So I'm kind of telling a story with these, and that is that wherever there's grass, this is where these rocks are kind of at. You'll notice I'm not putting them on the other, I guess it's sand. I guess originally this was supposed to be sand, the lighter brown areas.
Mm-hmm.
But this allows me just to kind of set up this world, continue to tell the story as I'm working. Maybe I'll put a couple of them in the water in here too. Something to kind of explore and play with. So I hit F11 again. We'll back out of there. Let's go ahead and turn that one off. Go ahead and turn this one on. Now remember, this one has its default setting, so it's going to be really dense, which I don't want. I'm going to turn my density down to something like 20. Whoops. And let's set my radius to at least 300. See what that looks like. That's pretty good. Cool. So I want these. Again, telling a story. I don't want palm trees up here above. I want these guys. Oh, so here is. Remember, it's looking at the normal, so we got one that's going off to the side here. So let's find that setting. Does this have a search function in it? Oh, bummer. So placement, align to normal. We're going to turn that one off. That, and then let's go back into an undoable operation. There we go. So now you can see that they're going to come in vertical like that.
Much better.
Yeah, here we go.
I guess that could tell a story if you had the align to normals, because trees normally, will grow vertically regardless of which direction they come out. But if the ground started to slide after the tree existed, then it would be falling, so could tell a story.
What's kind of fun about this too is that you can hide items down in like the forest, like ooh, what's over there, like what's happening here. Put a couple of them up here on the top. It's going to look really weird. Oh, we can also set like the size in here too, which is pretty cool. And if we want, we can just go into single mode and be like, okay, well, let's place just a couple of them up here at the top. Right angle from the ground here. Get one up there? Yeah, I can get one up there. Cool. Cool. So they're not going to be real close to each other. So there's that. Maybe I got a couple of them that kind of grew down in here. We go back to our palm trees. Let's turn that off. These are all instances, so they're rather inexpensive. So single, whoops, make sure that that's turned on. There we go. And let's also do random yaw. And then I also want to change the size. So where was my size? Scaling. So we can say 0.5. Let's say 0.25. And we'll leave it at 1. So that way I get some bigger ones and some smaller ones down here. One each. Back into paint. Just kind of spread these out across the beach. And you'll notice I can't paint down into the water here either too far, because I've got that limit as far as how far down in the world and how high in the world I can actually paint these. So I can't come up here too much. I got one of them in there. It's going to be the oddball. Let's turn that off.
Tell a story about a brave palm tree that chose to climb a mountain.
Exactly. Get a couple of them in here. There we go. And a couple more here on the front. So cool. Let's go back down into our world, hit F11. And this is the point where, and start to play, we can kind of check something. Now, anybody realize that I set these up so you can walk through them? Just realized that. So let's go back into here. Let's go back into our collision, and we'll just say block all, and we'll do that for the trees as well. Playtest, playtest, playtest. Oh, I can still walk through it. What is going on? What did I do? All right, let's see what we did. Block all.
The fact that they're already placed, do you have to go into the objects instead of the foliage tool? You have to go into the objects as they exist in the world now?
I don't think so. I don't think that's a thing. It might be. Let's see what we can see. I can stand on these.
Parkour, palm tree parkour.
So you can go
Clever
through
Lake
those.
Studios. And
You get between those because the collision is huge.
right, but you had that set when you placed them, the palm trees.
True, but I didn't for these guys. Oh, I bet I know what's going on.
Ooh.
So yes, you do have a point. So let's go back over to the rock. So let's go back into our regular select mode. And if you select these, here's something actually that's kind of cool too. This is like one object.
Wow, that's cool.
And if you change the terrain, you can actually get them to move too. But before we tangent into that, so let's go back over to the rock. Even though we set collision on in the instances, we need to go, let's close this down, starter content, back into the props, back over to the rock. This, let's turn the wireframe on here, doesn't have collision by default. I forgot this one doesn't actually have that. So there's no way for it to actually like turn on for each instance. So let's go ahead and make collision for this one. So up here at the top left, come up here, and we're just going to say auto convex collision. That'll actually open up this little thing down here in the bottom right. And I'm just going to hit the default settings, just hit apply. Then we get, and it's really subtle, but there's a green shape inside of there. Actually, I don't need 4 hulls. Let's go and make it down to like 2. So we'll say remove collision, and then we'll rerun that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it's a little less geometry to work with. And then we'll save that. We'll go into our landscape. Let's go back down to the ground and play. Now, bonk, we should run into it. Yep. We can climb it too.
And you got your 90-degree climb. I was curious about that.
Oh, there we go. Walk out to the end. So here you go. There's some fun things that we have in there. So let's play with the landscape because I do want to show you this as well. So let's go back into our landscape. So if I were to, so in our sculpt layer in here, and that is very bright white, but let's back this up a little bit. If I were to come over here and add a little bit of geometry to this, and let's make our brush a little bit smaller. There we go. And if I move this, you'll notice that these pop right back up. If I move them down, whoops, they'll snap back down to the ground. So they're dynamic. All of these pieces talk to each other. It's so nice. It's so nice.
So cool. So they're aligned to that mesh plane that is the terrain, essentially. So when you move the terrain, they'll realign. Just kind of like the normals were matching the angle of the normal. I guess that would actually, if you had that set too, it would probably move the angle of the tree.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, they all kind of talk to each other. You know, the guys at Epic, just guys and ladies at Epic, just make everything. They make it work. I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah.
A lot of magic.
Amongst yourselves.
There was one thing that was just a fleeting thought. I was going to show you all something, and now I don't remember what it was. It wasn't super important, but it was definitely kind of cool. So, yeah, there we go. Now we have our little world.
Yeah, let's get a screenshot here for the Twitters.
So nice angle. Here we go. There you got it.
Hold up. All right, give a smile in the camera.
Like we do.
All right.
So thank you, everybody that's kind of joined me on this one. I would like to explore a little bit more in the ZBrush side of stuff, but I think this foliage stuff is just a lot of fun to play with for sure. And the landscape stuff as well. And that's really why I wanted to show you that. I've got a few more ideas, but I would love to hear what y'all would like to kind of play with, especially now that I've kind of thrown ZBrush into the mix. We can kind of jump further and further into that stuff as well. And yeah. let us know what you guys think. And yes, we are working. We did have a couple comments about the resolution on some of these videos. We're working on that. It is in the works. We're going to make these a little bit better. I do have part of the reason that you see a big square screen is because I have a big Cintiq that's a big square, and that's why that's there. There's a reason for all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, the screen aspect ratio is kind of what it is.
It is based on what my screen actually looks like. Because yeah, we hear you, we're listening. No worries, we got your back. So.
All right, cool. I'm just posting that nice image to the Twitters. Boom. Oh, let's tag our friends on that one.
Yeah.
Cool, man. What are you thinking? What are you thinking down the road? Where do we want to lead all of this to? Or do we want to like have a big season finale and then, go dark, put a black hole on the screen for a while, and then come back with a new series? What's your thoughts?
I'm not really sure. Like the direction that I want to go is I want to play a little bit in Zbrush and kind of get some more information out there about the program. There are some free versions of it that we can play in for sure, which are awesome. So people can just kind of get their fingers dirty in it, as it would be with the digital clay. It's not really that dirty. It's just nice. And that's my plan for this kind of stuff. If there's something specific y'all want to see inside of that program, like how would you make X? How do you do this? Can you go slower when you make that palm tree so I know what I'm doing, kind of stuff? Like, let me know what y'all want to. And we can set it up so that it's either a workshop kind of thing. I can run it a little bit slower, or we can just blaze through it like I did today. So I personally like to just kind of blaze through so you can kind of watch it at your own pace as needed. And I appreciate when you watch it once and then watch it a second time and a third time and then come back with questions, because I know there's things that I do that happen really, really fast. So let me know.
Cool. Yeah, dude, it sounds amazing. That ZBrush tool, I could see how addictive that could be. you get in there and you get the feeling that you can take over the world. I could see the smoke coming up from behind your chair and everything.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's awful for animation. It's amazing for sculpting and modeling, though. So
yeah,
there it is.
Wow, that's cool.
Yep.
All right, dude. Thank you. You're awesome. We appreciate you. Everybody, leave your comments. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that stuff. Follow us, retweet things, support us. We're helping you out. Hopefully you can help us out. And we're hiring. The team is growing. So if you're still here, we're hiring at the moment. We're hiring some curriculum designers, as well as Minecraft game programmers, programming. So lots of career opportunities as well. So, yeah, join us. We have a fun time.
Yeah, definitely a fun time.
All right. Cool. Thanks, everybody.